Well, joining us now on the programme is Israel's Foreign Ministry Affairs spokesman Oren Marmorstein. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. Tell us, first of all, what is Israel's endgame here?
Hi, Stuart. It's good to be with you on the show. You were talking about the endgame, and perhaps we should start by reminding all our viewers how this operation started and why it started. It started because of two existential threats that Iran posed against Israel and actually against the world. The first existential threat is the threat that Iran will be able to put their hands around nuclear weapon. And the second existential threat is the Iranian capability to have thousands and dozens of thousands of ballistic missiles. And for a tiny country like Israel, this poses an existential threat.
So how do you go about combating that?
So getting back to your question, the end game is to remove this double threat. There shouldn't be Iranian capability of producing hundreds, thousands, and dozens of thousands of ballistic missiles, and Iran should never have nuclear weapon.
So does that mean it's just taking out those military targets, or is it also about taking out the regime?
So the Prime Minister was very clear, stating that the objective of this operation is to remove those two threats that I've mentioned. A change of the regime is not part of this objectives. And of course, one can never know what are the results. But this is not part of our objectives.
He did say yesterday, though, didn't he, that how killing the Ayatollah would end the conflict. Is that not a way to do that?
So again, without referring to any specific details of Israeli operation, what we are focused on is something very simple: to make sure that Iran cannot exterminate the state of Israel. And this is not something theoretical. The Iranian had a very well-planned program that is called the Plan to Exterminate the State of Israel. It is based on three elements. The first is the nuclear one, the second is the ballistic one, and the third is trying to invade Israel like we've seen on October 7. So what we are doing now is making sure that those threats, this existential threat, is being removed.
Can you do that whilst protecting civilians as well at the same time?
Absolutely. We're doing everything possible to focus only on military targets. This is what the Israeli armed forces, the IDF, are doing in Iran. And this is, by the way, complete opposite of what the Iranians are doing here in Israel. They are targeting civilians. I can tell you that I spent with my family entire nights of this week, my two daughters, one in the age of 9, the other in the age of 12, my wife, in the shelter. And we are not army personnel, we live in a civilian neighborhood. Nevertheless, the Iranians are going after civilians. We have 24 civilians killed, more than 400 ballistic missiles falling on our heads. And this is in stark contrast between the Israeli way of conduct, aiming at military-related targets, nuclear-related targets, and the Iranian conduct, which is focused on targeting civilians.
But what about that figure that I mentioned at the top of the news from human rights groups, saying almost 600 people have now been killed in Iran?
I can tell you that the IDF is doing everything possible to make sure that civilians are out of harm's way. For example, last evening, the IDF published a very clear message to a specific neighborhood in Tehran, telling civilians, please, in order to protect yourself, get out of this area because it's too close to military targets. So I'm not familiar with any other militaries, armies that are giving an advance notice to their enemies just to make sure that civilians are not caught in the crossfire, and they are not part of this harm's way. But perhaps I should say something else. Yes, Israel is fighting this war, this operation. Israel is carrying out this operation to make sure that this existential threat is removed. But there's something else here. Those missiles that I mentioned, and the Iranians are trying to get the capability of more than 10,000 ballistic missiles. Those ballistic missiles, some of them are with the range of getting all the way to Europe. Those are intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Let me ask
Israel
you. Let me ask you now how closely you're working with the US, because Donald Trump says the US at the moment is just involved in defending Israel, not attacking Iran. At the same time, he's also used the word we. He's talked of us on social media. How closely is Israel intertwined already with the US?
I just want to finish the last point I was making. Here, those intercontinental ballistic missiles are aimed not at Israel. We're in the same continent as Iran. Those intercontinental ballistic missiles are aimed at Europe and other destinations, such as Paris, such as London, and cities around the world. And basically what Israel is doing the job to remove the threat against Israel, but it's removing the threat that is posed against the entire world.
I'm going to jump in again because we're going to run out of time if not. Let me ask you about the US, because obviously you need, don't you, to be able to penetrate those deep bunkers that Iran has been working in. You need the US's cooperation. How much and how big a calling is there from you, I suppose, to Donald Trump to get involved in this?
Regarding the US, America is Israel's closest ally, no question about it. We have a very close, intimate dialogue with our American friends. And the Americans were, of course, informed before this operation. And yes, we are in close contact with the Americans, hand in hand, close cooperation. And I will let the American to communicate their own positions. They can communicate it very clearly. And I think President Trump is communicating the United States position very clearly.
But from the aims that you mentioned at the top there, the only way that you're really going to be able to achieve that is if they get a lot more involved, isn't it?
Again, so far, so much was being done successfully. We were able to create severe damage to the nuclear program of Iran, who was at the 11th hour before getting to the point of having a nuclear weapon. So at the very last moment, we managed to create severe damage, but the work is not done. Much work is yet to be done, and this is why this operation is still being carried out.
Going to have to end it there. Thanks very much for joining us there, Oren Marmorstein, Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman. Thanks very much for being with us.